You don't belong here." The words fell sharp and cold, slicing through the polished silence of the marble bank lobby. Dozens of eyes turned. Some narrowed in suspicion, others widened in curiosity. But none looked at her with dignity. Lena Brooks, elegant, poised, her navy blazer pressed sharp against her frame, stood tall at the counter. She had come for a simple transaction, the kind any customer might make. But her very presence, her dark skin against the glow of crystal chandeliers, was treated as a crime. "Excuse me?" Lena's voice was calm, steady, though fire burned in her chest. The bank manager, a heavy-set man with silver hair and a smug smile, leaned closer. His name tag read Harrison Cole. He spoke slowly, deliberately, as though explaining arithmetic to a child. "You're attempting to withdraw an unusually large sum. You can't even provide proper identification. This is suspicious activity. We'll have to alert the authorities." The air shifted. Gasps rippled across the lobby. A mother tugged her child closer. A man in a tailored suit muttered under his breath, "Figures." Another began filming with his phone, the little red light blinking judgment into Lena's soul. Lena's fingers pressed against the edge of the counter. Her father's voice came to her, a memory rising like a hymn from Sunday morning pews. "Baby girl, the world will try to strip your crown. But don't you ever bow your head." She straightened. "I've provided my ID. My account information is accurate." "You're making an error, Mr. Cole." But Harrison Cole only smirked wider, his voice dripping condescension. "Fraudsters are good liars. But don't worry, the FBI will know what to do with you." A murmur of shock spread through the crowd. The FBI? For what? A withdrawal request? Her heart pounded, but her face remained still, carved from stone. She remembered her grandmother's stories about segregated banks in Alabama. About the counters where black hands weren't allowed to touch pens. About the days when dignity was a debt unpaid. And now, here she stood in 2024, living the same story dressed in a new suit. The crowd thickened. Some people pulled out their phones, recording. Others whispered words like scam, fraud, arrest. Lena's eyes swept the lobby. Every marble column, every glinting chandelier, every polished brass rail seemed to mock her. She had walked into this bank countless times before, quiet, unnoticed, her transactions completed without hesitation. But today, under the weight of bias, she was suddenly a suspect. Her mind whispered questions she knew her audience would ask. Have you ever been judged guilty before you could even speak? Have you ever been treated as less in a place where you rightfully belong? A guard stepped forward, hand brushing against his holster. Harrison Cole's voice rang out. "Security, stand by. The FBI will be here shortly." The lobby grew still. Even the clicking of heels on marble seemed to pause. Lena Brooks, a woman whose name carried more weight than anyone in that room could imagine, inhaled deeply. Her phone buzzed. A message flashed across the screen, "Board call in 15 minutes. Don't be late." The timing was cruelly ironic. For while Harrison Cole believed he was exposing a fraudster, Lena Brooks was in fact the newest appointee to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, a position confirmed by the Senate just weeks before. A position Harrison Cole couldn't begin to fathom. And yet here she stood, a judge in her own right, a steward of America's banking future, being profiled as a criminal for daring to access her own account. She steadied her breath. The words of gospel rose inside her, silent but strong. "No weapon formed against me shall prosper." The crowd watched her every move, waiting for her to break, to shout, to resist. But Lena simply adjusted her blazer, eyes unblinking. Then Harrison Cole delivered the line that turned humiliation into history. "Ma'am," he said coldly, pressing the phone to his ear, "I'm calling the FBI to arrest you." The crowd gasped. A woman dropped her purse. A teenager muttered, "This is crazy." But Lena Brooks only whispered one sentence under her breath, soft, almost like a prayer. "They'll regret this." And with that, the fate of the entire room shifted. For the FBI was on its way, the cameras were rolling, and the truth of who she really was would soon shatter every false assumption in that marble palace. The sound came first, low, rising, unmistakable. Sirens. Through the bank's tall glass windows, the reflections of flashing red and blue lights danced across the marble floor. Conversations hushed. Phones lifted higher. Customers pressed closer, eager for spectacle. The hum of judgment in the lobby shifted into the buzz of impending drama. Harrison Cole's chest swelled with self-importance. He straightened his tie, smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "Perfect timing," he muttered. "They'll deal with her now." Lena Brooks stood still. She didn't flinch. She didn't plead. She didn't shrink. Her gaze drifted upward to the ceiling's ornate chandelier. The light fractured into tiny golden stars across the marble. She remembered her grandmother again, kneeling in a little church in Montgomery, whispering through hymns of justice yet to come. "Don't let them see you bend," her grandmother had once told her. "You are the daughter of kings and queens." The heavy glass doors swung open. 4 agents stepped inside, black suits crisp, badges gleaming at their belts. The room shifted as though the very air bent to their authority. The crowd murmured, nervous and excited. For some, it was entertainment. For Lena, it was history repeating itself. "There," Harrison Cole announced, pointing with the flourish of a man certain of victory. "That's her. The fraudster. She tried to withdraw money she can't possibly own. She needs to be arrested immediately." The agents approached. Their boots echoed across the marble. One, a tall woman with sharp eyes and a voice like steel, asked, "Name?" "Harrison Cole," he replied proudly, puffing his chest. "I'm the branch manager here." He jabbed a finger toward Lena. "And that's the suspect." The agent turned her gaze to Lena. Something in her eyes flickered. Recognition? Respect? The faintest trace of hesitation crossed her face before she masked it with professionalism. "Ma'am," she said firmly, "we need to verify your identity." Lena's lips curved, not in fear but in the faintest hint of irony. She reached slowly into her bag, her movements deliberate, calm, visible to all. The crowd leaned forward, phones capturing every second. Harrison Cole sneered. "Careful, she's probably hiding something." Gasps rippled. Someone whispered, "This is about to go bad." But Lena withdrew nothing dangerous, only a leather portfolio, sleek and dignified. She set it gently on the counter, flipped it open, and revealed a card embossed with the seal of the United States. The crowd fell silent. It was no ordinary ID. No driver's license. No credit card. It was a Federal Reserve Board of Governors identification card, one of the most powerful credentials in American finance. The agent froze. Her breath caught. Then, with the weight of realization, she straightened, stepped back, and lifted her hand in a salute. The other agents followed. The silence in the lobby shattered into audible shock. Phones shook as people tried to capture the moment. A teenager screamed, "Oh my God, she's a Fed governor." Harrison Cole blinked, his confidence crumbling. "Wow, what is this?" Lena closed the portfolio slowly, her composure unshaken. "This," she said softly, "is who you just called the FBI on." The tall agent spoke, her voice carrying through the stunned silence. "Sir, you've just attempted to humiliate and criminalize a sitting member of the Federal Reserve Board. Do you understand what that means?" The crowd erupted in whispers. "Federal Reserve? That's one of the most powerful positions in the country. She oversees the banks." "Lord have mercy." Harrison stammered, face draining of color. This must be some kind of mistake." Lena turned her gaze on him, steady and unwavering. Her voice, calm but sharp as a blade, carried through every corner of the bank. "Mistake? No, Mr. Cole. This was not a mistake. This was profiling. This was arrogance. This was prejudice wearing the mask of procedure. You didn't see a customer. You saw a suspect." The room pulsed with her words. Customers shifted uncomfortably, some nodding in agreement, others staring at Cole in disgust. Harrison Cole's lips trembled. I was just following protocol." Lena cut in. "Then perhaps your protocol needs reform." Gasps filled the air. The tall FBI agent nodded slowly, her salute lowering but her respect unchanged. "Your Honor," she said carefully, "how would you like us to proceed?" All eyes turned to Lena Brooks. Phones recorded every flicker of expression. This was no longer just a bank dispute, it was becoming a moment destined for headlines, a scene replayed in newsrooms, a case study in justice and dignity. Lena took a deep breath. The gospel hymn whispered again in her mind, like the steady hum of ancestors behind her. She looked at Harrison Cole, then at the agents, then at the crowd. "This isn't just about me," she said softly, her voice carrying like a sermon. "This is about every black woman who's been told she doesn't belong. About every person judged before they spoke. About dignity denied in places we rightfully own." The silence was absolute. Even the air seemed to wait. Then she spoke the words that made history in that marble lobby. "You want to know how we proceed? We proceed with the truth." The silence after Harrison's words was suffocating. "FBI," someone in the crowd whispered, their voice breaking the stillness like a cracked hymn note. Phone cameras tilted higher. Fingers tapped furiously, comments flooding live streams. Did he really call the FBI on her? This is madness. Lena Brooks didn't flinch. She had been underestimated before. She had been doubted before. But this was different. Her father's voice echoed in her memory like a church bell on Sunday morning, steady, unyielding. When they come against you, child, stand taller. Make them see who you are. The sound of heavy doors swinging open cut through the lobby. Two men in dark suits entered, their presence commanding immediate silence. Their jackets bore the faint bulge of concealed sidearms. FBI agents. Their shoes clicked against the marble floor, slow and deliberate, each step a reminder that power was shifting again. "Where's the suspect?" one of them asked flatly, scanning the room. Harrison's hand shot forward. "That's her," he said, pointing at Lena like a man throwing a spear. She attempted to withdraw fraudulent funds. She refused to cooperate. "She's hostile." The crowd gasped. A mother pulled her child closer, as though history itself was unfolding before them. Phones zoomed in, faces froze in disbelief. The agents approached Lena. Calm, professional. But their eyes were sharp, calculating. One of them pulled out a tablet, scrolling quickly through data before even asking her a word. Lena knew how this worked. Accusation first, truth later. "Ma'am," one agent said, his voice clipped, "we need to ask you a few questions. Please step aside." Lena's lips parted, but instead of panic, her voice carried warmth, measured, steady, like a hymn rising above chaos. "Step aside? Do you know who I am? Do you understand what you've just been called here for?" The words rolled across the lobby, hushed at first, then louder. The crowd leaned in. Someone whispered, "She doesn't sound afraid." Another replied, "She sounds like she's in charge." Harrison barked out, desperate to reclaim authority. "She's stalling. Search her documents. Take her portfolio. That'll prove everything." The agent hesitated. His training told him to follow protocol. His instinct told him something about Harrison's urgency didn't add up. Still, procedure mattered. He reached toward the portfolio. Lena pulled it close, her eyes never leaving his. "You do not touch this," she said, her tone commanding, resonant. "These documents are protected by federal confidentiality statutes. If you lay a hand on them without cause, you will violate not only the Fourth Amendment but your own oath as federal officers." The room went still. Even the children watching seemed to hold their breath. The second agent studied her face, recognition flickering in his eyes. He had seen that face before, on television, in hearings, on the news when systemic reforms were being debated in Washington. "Wait," he murmured to his partner. "I think I know who she is." The first agent frowned, impatient. "Then confirm it." Phones trembled in the air as the livestream count skyrocketed. 10,000, 25,000, 32,000 viewers. The comments scrolled endlessly. "Don't touch her stuff. She knows the law better than them." This is about to explode. Lena straightened, her blazer crisp, her posture radiating dignity. She turned toward Harrison, her voice soft but lethal. "You wanted the FBI, Mr. Cole? Now the truth comes with them." The elderly woman from earlier, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, pushed forward again, her voice shaky but firm. "Agents, that's Judge Lena Brooks. I worked in the courthouse 30 years. I know her. She's no criminal, she's the law." The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, murmurs. The revelation spread like fire in dry grass. The agents exchanged a look, their professional detachment slipping for the first time. Harrison stuttered, "Judge? That's ridiculous. She's lying. This is some act." But his words faltered as Lena reached calmly into her portfolio, pulling out a leather case. She placed it on the counter with deliberate precision. The gold-embossed seal of the United States courts gleamed under the fluorescent lights. The FBI agents froze. And in that frozen second, the balance of power shifted forever. The seal gleamed under the sterile fluorescent lights, golden against the dark leather. The moment stretched like a held breath. Phones zoomed in, livestream comments exploded. "What is that? Oh my God, that's a judge's ID. He's done. Harrison is done." The two FBI agents froze mid-step, their composure cracking. They had stormed into that bank expecting a criminal. Instead, before them stood a woman whose authority outranked nearly everyone in the room. Agent Carter, the older of the two, cleared his throat, his voice more measured now. "Your Honor. Judge Brooks." The words landed like thunder. The entire lobby gasped as if the walls themselves could feel the shift in power. Mrs. Hayes covered her mouth with trembling hands. A young man whispered to his grandmother, "She's a judge, Grandma. She's really a judge." Lena Brooks nodded once, not arrogantly, but with the calm grace of someone who had lived through storms before. "Yes," she said softly, though her voice carried to every corner of the marble chamber. "Judge Lena Brooks. Superior Court, Criminal Division." The livestream counter ticked upward, 50,000, 62,000, 74,000. The world was watching this humiliation unravel in real time. Harrison stumbled back, his face pale, his arrogance unraveling with every second. This is a setup. She's bluffing. Anyone could print a badge. Before he could finish, Agent Carter stepped forward, examining the ID with reverent caution. The federal seal shimmered, authentic and undeniable. Carter's jaw tightened. He turned to the crowd and then back to Harrison. "This isn't fake." The younger agent Lopez whispered, "Sir, this is bad. Very bad." Lena's voice sliced through the tension, calm but sharp as glass. "You call the FBI on a sitting judge for attempting to withdraw money from her own account. You profiled me based solely on the color of my skin and your own prejudice." The words hung heavy, like a church hymn sung over broken pews. Harrison's lips moved, but no sound came out. The crowd no longer looked at him with respect or authority. They looked at him with disgust. Mrs. Hayes raised her trembling voice again, anger replacing her earlier fear. "Mr. Cole, I tried to tell you. I told you I knew her. But you dismissed me. You dismissed all of us. You thought your word was gospel, but it was poison." The crowd erupted. Applause, shouts of agreement, phones held higher to catch every angle. One teenager live streaming whispered, "This is history. This is gonna be in textbooks one day." Agent Carter turned fully to Lena now, his posture shifting. He straightened his tie, placed his hand on his chest and said words that shocked everyone. "Your Honor, on behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I sincerely apologize for this treatment. You should never have been subjected to such humiliation." Agent Lopez followed suit, nodding, his voice steady. "You have our respect, Judge Brooks." And then, in a moment no one in that lobby would ever forget, both FBI agents stood at attention and saluted. The room exploded. Gasp. Cheers. Applause. The sound of justice reclaiming its throne. Harrison's face drained of all color. The man who had just barked for Lena's arrest now stood trembling as the agents he'd summoned honored the very woman he tried to degrade. Lena did not gloat. She did not smile. Her voice remained steady, grounded in the dignity of generations who had endured worse and still risen. "This is not about me," she said, turning to the crowd, her words deliberate. "This is about every black man and woman who has been silenced, humiliated, and criminalized for daring to exist in spaces deemed too much for us. Today you all saw how quickly assumptions are weaponized, how swiftly dignity is stripped away. But you also saw the truth emerge." Her words moved like scripture. Some in the crowd wiped tears from their eyes. Others nodded, whispering amen. She looked back at Harrison, her gaze piercing but not cruel. "Mr. Cole, you wanted me arrested. Instead you've been exposed. And let me be clear, this isn't ending here. The law will hold you accountable just as it holds every citizen." Harrison stumbled, his pride collapsing faster than his words. Please, I didn't. I was following protocol." "Protocol?" Lena's tone rose, carrying the same sharpness she reserved for lawyers caught lying in her courtroom. "Your protocol violated my constitutional rights. Your protocol humiliated me in public. Your protocol assumed guilt before proof, color before character. If that is protocol, then protocol is broken." Phones captured every syllable. Hashtags flooded Twitter. Hashtag Judge Brooks, hashtag BankwhileBlack, hashtag JusticeLive. The moment had already gone beyond that marble floor. It was history in motion, amplified by every camera, every repost, every echo of applause. And yet, Lena knew, it wasn't enough to expose the humiliation. True justice meant reform. True justice meant change. As the applause roared, her phone buzzed again. Chief Justice Margaret Thompson. The emergency session she had been delayed from. It was about nationwide banking reforms. About racial profiling in financial institutions. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very bias she endured in that lobby was the issue she was scheduled to cast her deciding vote on. She looked at her phone. Then she looked at the agents, at the crowd, at Harrison. Her voice lowered but carried the weight of generations. "This story doesn't end with a salute. It ends with change. And I will make sure of it." The room erupted once more. And just as the crowd began to chant her name, Lena lifted her phone, and answered the Chief Justice's call. The echo of applause still vibrated through the bank's marble lobby, but outside, the storm had already begun. News vans screeched to a halt across the street, reporters sprinting with cameras, microphones, and the hunger of sharks smelling blood. Inside, Lena Brooks remained still, phone in hand, her calm presence contrasting with the chaos she had endured. Harrison Cole tried to shrink into the corner, but there was no corner small enough to hide him from the weight of what he had unleashed. Judge Brooks, Judge Brooks! Voices erupted as reporters pushed against the glass doors, their lenses pressed against the surface like moths desperate for light. Mrs. Hayes turned to Lena, her voice trembling but proud. They'll tell this story for years. I've worked in that courthouse 40 years, but I've never seen justice arrive so quickly, so boldly. Lena gave the older woman a soft smile. Justice doesn't always arrive on time, Mrs. Hayes. Sometimes we have to drag it here ourselves. Her words struck the crowd like gospel. Phones captured it instantly, clips spreading across Twitter and Facebook. The livestream chat scrolled so fast it was unreadable, hearts, raised fists, hashtags exploding. Hashtag justice for Lena, hashtag bank while black, hashtag Judge Brooks. But Harrison wasn't finished trying to save himself. His voice cracked, desperate now. Judge Brooks, I didn't mean any harm. I was just trying to protect the bank. Lena turned toward him, her expression unflinching. Protect the bank? By criminalizing its own client? Protect the bank? By summoning federal agents against an innocent woman? Or protect yourself? By assuming wealth and dignity couldn't belong to someone who looks like me? Harrison's mouth opened, but no words came out. His shame was already written across every phone screen. One teenager shouted from the back, "She owned him." Laughter erupted, but it wasn't cruel, it was triumphant. For too long, people had seen these encounters end differently. But not today. Not this time. Agent Carter, the senior FBI officer, raised his voice to cut through the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, we're closing this case immediately. There was no crime committed here. Judge Brooks has every right to access her account without harassment. We will be filing a full report on the misuse of federal resources. The crowd cheered again, the sound bouncing off the marble walls. Harrison staggered, the last of his authority slipping through his fingers like sand. And then the cameras turned to Lena once more. Reporter Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 pushed through, microphone raised. Your Honor, do you have a statement for the public? What message do you want people to take from what happened here today? Lena inhaled deeply. She thought of her father, who had marched in Selma. She thought of her mother, who had sung gospel hymns to drown out the fear of Jim Crow. She thought of every client, every defendant, every student who had told her they were stopped for looking suspicious. Yes, she said finally, her voice low but firm. I have a message. The lobby fell silent. Even the reporters lowered their microphones, sensing the weight of what was about to be spoken. This is bigger than me. What happened here today is part of a pattern, one that stretches back centuries. A pattern where black bodies are viewed with suspicion before dignity, where success is doubted before it's proven, where wealth is criminalized before it's recognized. But let today be a warning. The days of silent humiliation are over. The crowd roared, a chorus of amens, cheers, and tears. Outside, the chants grew louder as the protest that had begun online materialized into flesh and blood voices on the street. Justice for Lena. Justice for us all. Inside, Harrison was sweating so heavily his shirt clung to his back. He whispered to himself, I'm ruined. Lena overheard him. Her eyes softened, not with forgiveness but with truth. You're not ruined, Mr. Cole. You're exposed. And exposure is the first step toward accountability. Agent Lopez's radio crackled. Headquarters was already aware. The Chief Justice's call still buzzed in Lena's hand. And somewhere in the chaos, Harrison's assistant quietly slipped out the side door, tears in her eyes, unwilling to be complicit any longer. Then, in a twist no one expected, Mrs. Hayes raised her own phone. Her voice shook but carried. I just spoke to my son. Commissioner Hayes is on his way. He wants a word with you, Harrison. The crowd gasped. Everyone in the county knew Commissioner Hayes, a man of integrity who had dismantled corrupt practices for decades. And now, his own mother had witnessed this debacle. Harrison slumped into the nearest chair. Oh God. The crowd's energy shifted again. Anticipation, suspense, the promise of even greater justice on the horizon. Lena looked toward the glass doors, where sirens flickered blue and red in the reflection. It looks like Act 2 is about to begin, she whispered. And as the crowd parted, the imposing figure of Commissioner Hayes entered the lobby, his eyes sharp, his jaw set, ready to pass judgment not as family but as law. The crowd hushed as the heavy glass doors swung open. Commissioner Samuel Hayes stepped inside, his tall frame cutting an imposing figure. His gray suit bore the weight of authority, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor like a judge's gavel announcing order. All eyes shifted toward him. Some with hope, some with fear. But none dared to look away. Harrison Cole nearly fell out of his chair. Commissioner. I didn't know your mother was here. Commissioner Hayes fixed him with a cold, unblinking stare. You didn't need to know my mother was here. You needed to know the law. You needed to know basic decency. His voice carried like thunder, heavy with disappointment. The crowd erupted with murmurs, cameras zooming in, live streams exploding with heart emojis and fire icons. Tell me, Mr. Cole, Hayes continued, each word deliberate, on what grounds did you call in the Federal Bureau of Investigation? Was Judge Brooks threatening you? Did she attempt robbery? Or was her greatest crime daring to walk into your bank while black? The silence was suffocating. Harrison stuttered, searching for words that would not come. I thought I was protecting our clients. I didn't know who she was. Commissioner Hayes's jaw tightened. And that's exactly the problem. You didn't need to know who she was. You needed to respect who she is, a human being, a client, a woman with every right to be here. Gasps filled the lobby. Someone shouted from the back, "Say it louder." The crowd clapped in agreement. Lena Brooks stood calm, regal, her eyes fixed on Hayes. In that moment, she felt the spirits of Selma, Montgomery, and Birmingham walking beside her. This was no longer a bank dispute. This was history repeating itself in real time. Commissioner Hayes turned, now addressing the entire room. Ladies and gentlemen, I have spent 3 decades reforming law enforcement in this county. I've stood against corrupt officers, dismantled racist policies, and trained departments on equity. But today, he gestured toward Harrison, trembling in his suit. Today shows us how much work remains outside the precinct. In our banks, in our schools, in our hospitals. Racism doesn't wear a uniform. It wears a suit and tie, hides behind a desk, and signs away people's dignity. The crowd roared. A woman waved her church fan in rhythm with the chants, "Justice! Justice! Justice!" Lena finally stepped forward, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. "Commissioner Hayes, may I speak?" "Of course, Judge Brooks," he said, bowing his head slightly in respect. She turned to the cameras, her posture a blend of grace and fire. "Let this be clear, this is not about me alone. Today I was humiliated publicly. Tomorrow, it will be another black man told his account is suspicious, another black woman denied access to what she has earned, another black child treated as a suspect before a student. But the time for silence is over. We demand accountability, not just apologies." The crowd's energy grew electric. Phones rose higher. Hashtags spread faster. Hashtag Justice Bank, hashtag Lena Brooks, hashtag Systemic Change. Harrison finally snapped. "This isn't fair. You're turning this into a spectacle. I didn't mean it like that." Lena's gaze never wavered. "Spectacle? Mr. Cole, this is fairness. For once, the cameras aren't pointed at the accused black body, they're pointed at the system that falsely accused it. You called the FBI to remove me from my father's legacy, from my rightful dignity. Now the FBI is here, saluting me instead." And as if on cue, Agent Carter stepped forward. His hand rose to his temple in formal salute. "Judge Brooks, on behalf of the Bureau, we recognize your leadership, your integrity, and the injustice you've faced today. We will not forget this moment." The crowd gasped, phones shaking as they tried to capture the exact second the salute was made. Tears streamed down Mrs. Hayes' cheeks. Amara, still live streaming, whispered, "This is history, y'all. This is history happening in front of us." Harrison collapsed into his chair, his face drained of all color. His empire of arrogance had fallen brick by brick in front of the world. Commissioner Hayes looked down at him, his words final. "You will step down. Effective immediately. The bank board will hear of this and the state will investigate further. You've turned this bank into a house of shame. Consider this your last day behind that desk." The crowd erupted. Applause, chants, songs.